And what we're going to be talking about today is that stage in your journey where, you know, a lot of you are at that early stage where you are the business and the business is you. But you all have ambitions that the impact of what you do socially, environmentally, is going to be much bigger than one person can have. That the organizations that you're growing are going to be much bigger than just you. And that can be a painful process because it's a little bit of separation anxiety where you're used to being completely in control of everything. But then you get to a stage where if you really have big ambitions, that you have to start building something bigger than yourself, which takes a lot of self-reflection, a lot of self-awareness, a lot of courage. And I couldn't think of three better people than the people we're going to be chatting to about that. So I'm just going to introduce them briefly and then obviously ask them to tell a little bit about it. So firstly, from London, we have Mr. Charlie Dark, who I had the pleasure of getting to know last year at the Bradford Academy. An amazing guy. I don't know where to start on your CV, Charlie. A runner is probably a good place to start, but really a sort of cultural leader, an activist, a DJ, just an all-round amazing person who has built an amazing community, not around himself, but importantly in front of himself. So Charlie, great to see you.
My friend, great to see you too.
Thanks, Charlie. Secondly, we've got Amy Kaherl from Detroit, Michigan, who I think, Amy, we first met 2016, I think, 2016, 2017. I was running a storytelling workshop, I think, in Baltimore. And Amy was one of the participants in the US Academy and runs an amazing, started what is now a global movement. It was started as a thing called Detroit Soup, which was really to bring communities together around small dinners where people in the community came and presented an idea as to how they could improve that community. And the best idea would win a small grant that evening. And that's a program that's now running, well, Amy can tell you where, but in over 200 cities around the world. And then Tomás Abrahao, bom dia, from Sao Paulo. Tomás was part of the 2015 cohort in the Brazilian Academy, who at the time he had an idea that he brought to the Academy. It was just him and this idea to be able to bring the organic vegetables produced by family farmers out in the periphery of Sao Paulo, which is a massive, massive city, and allow those organic farmers to get their produce into the hands of willing consumers in the city without having to compete with the big food conglomerates. And he's grown that now to a business. Well, I'll say it's quite astounding how far he's built it. The business is called Raízs, which in Portuguese means roots, and he's built a phenomenal business. So really, we're just going to have a conversation about those journeys, and particularly, from where you started it as something that you were the embodiment of, and the lessons you learned and the experiences you went through as you let this thing grow into the bigger movements, the bigger enterprises, the bigger organizations that you're now running. So, Charlie, if I can start with you. So great to see you, my friend.
It's good to see you too.
Just a little bit about you and where you were at the time when the idea for Dem Crew first started, and tell us a little bit about what Dem Crew was then and what it's become now.
Okay, so first off, hello everyone. It's good to see you all. It's always good to see positive faces during the times that we're going through, and thank you for your time and your energy for listening in. I'm really excited to be part of this. So a little bit about myself, as Ian said, Charlie Dark. I'm a poet and a DJ, record producer, yoga teacher, community builder, and self-proclaimed Renaissance man. you know. I spent probably, I've been in the music industry for 35 years now. And I started Run Dem Crew. Someone's got it. Is it possible for someone to mute themselves? Because I think I'm getting a bit of feedback from someone.
Yeah, everyone can mute. Yeah.
So I started Run Dem Crew because out of a necessity and a need. I think that's always really important. But essentially, I had arrived at a point in life where I had accumulated all of the material items that society had told me I should have. The cars were there, the house was there, the very large sneaker collections, the record collection was there. And I just remember looking in the mirror one day and just feeling really unhappy and just thinking, there's got to be more to life than this. And at the same time, one of my friends had died in his sleep, who was also in the music industry. And I just started realizing what a lonely place the music industry or the creative industry can be. Particularly the more successful you become, it's kind of quite isolating to fly to another country and, you know, play in front of 5,000 people, but then you're in the hotel room by yourself and all your friends are at home and they're asleep. So essentially, Run Dem Crew came out of an idea for a number of reasons. One was a personal quest for fitness. You know, I wanted to be fitter. I realized that health is wealth, and I was wealthy in all other parts of my life apart from in my health and in my body. If you don't have a healthy body, you can't enjoy the successes that you have. At the same time, I wanted to kind of create a space that brought people together at a time when social media and the rise of social media was kind of allowing people to be connected without having to be in the same physical space. I was working a lot on some youth projects with some young people who felt unsafe and, you know, were very much landlocked by the neighborhoods that they lived in and the lives they had led. And Run Dem Crew was this idea that if once a week I can put a call out for people to come and join me to run a mile, then hopefully more people will come and join, and it will be like a little fitness family that we can build. Because also the biggest thing was the Olympics were coming to London, and I live in the area where the Olympics are based. And I just didn't want London the same thing to happen to London that has happened to many other Olympic cities, where a large amount of money is spent on facilities, and then once the Olympics come and go, no one uses the facilities. So really it was kind of, you know, it came out of necessity and a need. And has never ever been, it's always from day one been about helping other people. It's never ever been about myself. And I think when you're running these projects, it's really important to leave your ego at the door. It's more important, I feel, for people to know what the project stands for than it does to actually keep referencing who is the person who created it. If you want it to basically fly and thrive in the world. That's it.
Thanks, Sonny.
You're welcome, my friend.
We'll pick up that story in a bit. And just I noticed there's somebody else special on the call. Charlie is one of the coaches of the Amapico program in the UK, which is still running but without the Amapico name now. We also have on the call, I noticed, Ms. Marielle Laguerre, who is an amazing personal coach. She's a coach of the cohort in the UK as well. She's an expert in personal branding. So Marielle, just give us a quick wave if you're there. She's still on mute, but she's here. But Marielle, welcome to the conversation. Amy, maybe if we can pick up with you. Again, back in and I forget exactly the year you started Detroit Soup, but again, where were you at in your life, and what was the sort of what made Detroit Soup happen?
Yeah, so I helped start Soup in 2010. And I think with this project, one would hope that you would think really hypercritically about how you start something, on the meaning of it, and what you think the impact is. Nope, not us. We wanted to throw a dinner. We wanted to get some people together. We thought if we helped raise a couple $100 to get weird, wacky ideas off the ground, well, wouldn't we be better for it? Detroit 2010 feels very different than Detroit 2020. Back then, it was just the blight of the city was so high. I mean, the education level so low. I grew up outside of the city. I had lived other places, and I had found my way back in the suburbs of the city. For me, it was selfish. I wanted to meet other people of like mine, not too different than Charlie's kind of quest of connection. And for us, it was just the idea that the city is so big. How do we connect with other people, and how do we get new things off the ground? A lot of funding in the community was institutional funding, and it went to the same things. So how do we get new, fresh ideas? And how do we get people from different silos to gather and connect? My background's in theology, so I was really interested in about, can people gather together in meaningful ways? And why does place matter? And it's been an incredible journey of 10 years. Never in a million years did I ever think that Soup would be in 200 cities. So much about the journey of allowing not just Detroit Soup to grow, but soups in other cities, whereas giving the people the permission and giving people enough information where they felt empowered to do it. I only live in one place, and you live where you live, and where you live is so special because you live there and you understand the energy, the flows, the pros, the cons, what's there, what's not there. And I think for me, giving soup away as much as we have has not just benefited me and the place that I live, but has benefited those who have participated in it. I think it's really special to watch strangers gather together in the name of community. It really excites me, and I think the feedback people get after attending a dinner. I mean, after the last year of just being so much online, I think gathering together only rises more of how special that is and how important it is.
Cool, thanks, Amy.
Mm-hmm.
And then Tomás, as I said, back in, I think it was 2015 when we first met, and you came and pitched your idea. And just tell us where you were at the time, a little bit about yourself and how the idea for Raízs came up.
At the time, I was at my garage. Actually, I'm Tomás. I'm an engineer, but I was a history teacher for 10 years, and then have been in eco-villas in Brazil and Bangladesh studying social business, and came back to Brazil. And I think the question for me was, at the time that I opened Raízs, it was, what I'm going to do with my life, what it means to me, where I will spend my time. So I'm sorry about my English. I'm the only one with not native English here. If you have some doubts, but Raízs, I think for me, it's about connection to and exchanging between the farms and the cities. Now we have more than 1,000 farmers and more than 100 employees, and it's a journey of struggling. Actually, every phase, every fundraising, every thing that we have done, I still struggle. For me, it's not I don't have a clear way. What I have is my experience about struggling and resilience, but it's about exchanging for me. It's just sitting at a table and eating and coming to the farms and exchanging with people. It's kind of hard to say that now, because in COVID, everyone is online and we are doing so much meetings and stuff, but we don't connect. Actually, we don't connect with people in this type of society. So how do you connect? And food is a way of connection in my point of view. And I think one thing that Charlie said too, that for me it's essential, it's about ego. So when you have a social project or a social business, ego is something that you have to deal with it. and understanding yourself and the limits of your ego is the best way to share your idea and share with other people and realize that that's not yours. It's for the world, so it should have other people. And I'm happy to be here and exchange with you guys. So let's go. Stop talking about me and start exchanging.
Thank you. It's interesting. I mean, you use the word self-awareness there, and I think it's something that comes up in all our conversations with all our guys. Because it's being self-aware on lots of different levels, but also knowing what you're good at, what you're bad at, what people can do better than you can. And Charlie, once you started the crew back in East London in the build-up to 2012, I guess. What was the first? When did this start to grow, and how did you welcome people into that, and then start to sort of hand over the ownership as a sort of collective?
Okay, so what I did at the beginning, because I was very aware that it was at that time it was kind of quite radical for the types of people that I was trying to bring together to run together as a group. We weren't people who had a history of fitness. This wasn't kind of the traditional type of person you see running. It was definitely a kind of a group of misfits that were coming together. So the first thing I decided to do was to incubate the idea with a very small group of people before I told anyone about it. So it literally started with myself and 5 friends. And we kind of ran it like that. Every Friday night we would meet, we would run a mile, and then we would go and eat, and then we would go and work, because, we're all DJs together. So we'd go and do what we were doing. And then that 5 grew to 15. And again, I just kept it very much undercover. And what I would do was, if I thought there were interesting people around me who I thought could benefit from being part of the group, I would call them up and ask them to come and join. And I made sure that the group was intergenerational from the very beginning. So it wasn't just a thing of, well, let me just get loads of young people to run together, or let me get lots of people who were my age to run together. It was almost what I was trying to do is very similar to what I do as a DJ, which is trying to bring lots of different types of people together from around the world together in one space through the passion of music and take them on a journey. So I literally would get to the point where I'd be like, right, okay, we've got too many people in the group who work in the city. We need some people who are unemployed and don't have jobs. And I'd go and recruit some of them. And the idea was that whilst these people were running together, they would start having these informal conversations. And so for a year, no one really knew what Run Dem was or what we did. They would just see this thing happening. We weren't really sharing it online with people. It was very much a kind of, if you know, then you know. And what that meant is that it created a really firm foundation before we started talking to brands and before we opened it up to a bigger group of people. So that process took about 12 months. But the most important thing I think that I did in that very early stage is we started working with Nike, and they offered us a load of trainers to give out to the kids who were coming to the project. And we had 30 pairs of shoes, and we got 30 kids to come down. They ran with us once and they never came back. And so I realized that actually the shoes weren't the thing that I needed. What I needed was space. Space, when you're doing your idea, is so important. And so I had this conversation with Nike, and they were like, how much money do you want from us to fund your project? And I said, I don't want any money. And immediately everyone around the table started to lean forward and listen more clearly to what was going on. And I said, what I really need is a space in a neutral area that's clean, that I can have for an indefinite period of time. And everyone around me was like, you're mad. Why have you not asked them for money? They're like one of the richest companies in the world. I was like, because you can give me the money, but it's never going to be enough for the type of space that I need in order for this project to be successful. So my advice to everyone when you start is box clever and box smart, and always think about your long-term goal, because it's about lining your dominoes up in the line so that they fall in the order that you want, so you get the ultimate final finale that you really want. Never think short-term.
That's a great point. We had a really interesting conversation this morning with Sade. You know Sade from Sour Lemons, and an amazing entrepreneur called Vava from Kenya, who runs a fair trade coffee social enterprise. And the conversation there was all about that, just being very clear what you want, and so the temptation is people go and ask for the things that they think the people they're talking to will give you, rather than being very clear on what you want and how to get it.
So true.
Yeah, so that kind of echoes a lot of what was said this morning.
Yeah.
And Amy, for you, like, you know, you ran Soups for a while. How did the first transition happen when another city picked up on what you were doing in Detroit?
Yeah, I'm sitting here like shaking my head like emphatically to what Charlie's saying, because everything you're saying, I absolutely have experienced. Money feels really good until it chokes you and it stops you and it like chains you down because you can't be free to do the things that you're doing. Soup was always about whatever came in, went out, which hurt, I guess, me as the founder, but like I'm figuring it out down the line. Like, that didn't matter, because after a while, all this stuff, people felt the energy in the room. People felt the connection and exchange, strangers meeting each other and finding that even though they lived in different silos, they were connecting and exchanging. And I think as people wanted to use that idea, you know, they would come to a dinner, they would see it, they would like be very nervous about starting. So they'd ask all the questions you're supposed to ask of what would you do differently? There was a lot that I would do differently, but it took me 3 years to figure out what that was. And by that point, we had been in some very large media publications like the New York Times and Oprah magazine, which sounds really nice, but that was never the point. And it became distracting to the dinner, because then you get people from outside of the community to like observe it rather than participate in it and be a neighbor. And, you know, Detroit is a complicated place, and living here is one thing, visiting is another. And I think for us, for me, to get the idea out there, I would respond. Everything I do is kind of just like a response to make things easier, so I don't have to like talk that much or email as much. I think the goal for me was, you know, I'd get the same email with the same kind of set of questions, and I realized that I would just start cutting and pasting and keep kind of like my answers in an email sheet. And that email sheet then kind of like turned into like a one pager online. And then the questions kind of kept coming, and I realized that it'd be easier just to create a manual that people could download. And then from the manual, it just said, all you have to do is try it, make all the failures, figure it out. It's like being community is messy, but like the biggest thing I've learned as it's kind of mimicked over time is where I've seen people who build for themselves, like for the organizer, and people who build for a user. If you're building your organization for a user, it means you get to be flexible, you have to change, you get to be wrong. The user isn't wrong, they're just having the experience. And so I think where I watched the Soups start and stop was that they were building it around themselves. So, submit your idea to Sally at organization.com. Well, like Sally would be gone in 3 months. So then who's your point of contact? Like I always knew that I wanted to build this, that like if I got hit by a bus and I was dead, like could the idea live on without me? And I was so lucky that early on in my life, I always had a boss that always said, work yourself out of a job, which has been great. It's been good and bad in a lot of different ways. But for this, specifically for soup, it's the reason why it's in so many cities. It's the reason why so many people feel empowered to use it, because there's so much language around it that says, please just take it. A lot of people, Charlie, not too different than you, I got flown to some places to help start a soup. Well, people started a soup to please me. I would leave and then the soup wouldn't happen again. I don't live where you live. You do it. You have all the tools and resources. Soup just takes time and energy and someone to kind of know how to make a little bit of food. And you can even, I've done it where we didn't even have food, you know? I think we think these things matter, but the only things that matter are the people that are gathering together and letting the people who are starting these dinners feel empowered to do it, and they themselves get out of the way. So I guess the theme of the day is check your ego at the door.
Thanks, Amy. Thomas, obviously Charlie and Amy are running, or the projects they're talking about are sort of movements. They're not sort of a commercial enterprise, and I wouldn't call it the benefit, but they have the freedom to let it grow in its own way. Whereas you're trying to grow a commercial enterprise that has a lot of financial transactions, a lot of systems that need to be there. Going back to the point of self-awareness, when you first started, you were kind of chief executive, chief financial officer, chief marketing officer, chief technology officer, farmer relationship management. You were doing everything.
I hate
as you
the
started
nominee.
to realize that you couldn't do it all, what process did you go through in terms of reflecting on your own skills and strengths and where you needed help?
Okay, I don't feel like a chief of nothing, actually. I hate the chief word. It's like, it's about ego too. But actually, when I was in my garage, and then I have Pedro Navio, that was the former Latin American president of Red Bull, say, I won't give you money, I will give you a house, a space. This was really, really important to me. But I think there is one thing. I think, of course, NGOs and movements are diverse than social business. You have some differences. But I think about self-awareness, I was trying to do everything, and actually money, it's not the answer. And it's still not. So you can transact 100 pounds, 1,000. Now we transact like millions at the year, at the month. So money is not the answer. The answer is about yourself, because you have to do all this stuff. You need people. During some time, these people won't fill all your holes in the movement or organization. And it's kind of like an utopia at sometimes, because you're doing stuff that you don't like, but you still believe in your mission, in your purpose. And you say, what the fuck? I started this because I didn't agree with the system, and actually now I'm doing things that I don't like. So resilience, to get to some point that you have more people and you have help and you have a team and you have and you can share all the things, the responsibility, the money, everything. It's kind of for me, it's the way. So resilience and social and emotional resilience is the biggest thing for me. And this was what Red Bull and Amapico helped me with. So, because we always say, oh, I need money to do that, I need money to grow. Actually, you don't. I'm sorry. I from my experience, you don't need the money. Maybe you need much less than you want. or you think you need, but money is not the answer. And the point of self-awareness is like, you have to do a lot of stuff and a lot of things that you actually don't like daily. And that's true. For me, that's true. And if these things are kind of changing because you have to be the, how can I say, you have to tap the hose of the organization as they grow. So they are different holes and you have different challenges along the time and you have to be there. So you need to grow as a person. You need to grow as a human being. And this consciousness about what we think it's the job or happiness or the sacrifice in, to have a big movement or a big social enterprise or have big changes in the society and in people's lives, you need to be resilient. And for this to be resilient, you need to know yourself emotionally and know what you want and the sacrifice that you need to make to get there. But to get to a point where always when I was in these conversations with people that have passed a little bit of experience along the way than myself, I would say, okay, what's practical here? So I think maybe the guys are asking themselves, what's practical here? So you need to think like, what do you want? This is the biggest question. What are you up for? And then you need people to do it together with you, and you need to share your idea, and you need to think about investors, you need to think about your board in case of social enterprises, not movements or ONGs. But for me, the emotional resilience and knowing yourself and this self-awareness was the biggest thing. So I don't give up, because there is a lot of times that you want to give up. That I said, okay, for me, I have a lot of times that I said, it's enough. I think I will do these again sometimes, because you, as I said, you're always struggling, but I'm happy. You can find happiness in the struggle too. So that's the whole idea for me. I don't know if I was clear about myself, but that's it.
Absolutely. Cool. We'll come back to something you said there. But Charlie, for you, because I know you mentioned Nike, and I remember when you told me the story that you sort of parted ways with Nike eventually. And just talk a little bit about that and sort of the thought process that you went through, which I think was governed very much by a principle of keeping the spirit and the purity of what you started.
Yeah.
So just
I think one thing that at the time I started working with Nike and other sports brands, my reason for doing that is because I'd worked for a long time in education, where in order to get money, there's a lot of form filling that you have to do. There's a lot of hoops that you have to jump through. And at that time, obviously, because the Olympics were coming, every sports brand suddenly was thinking, we need community because, you know, this thing is coming and we actually don't have a connection with the community. I think what has happened now is lots of people have an idea because they want to work with a brand, not actually because they're really into the idea. They like the kudos of saying, I work with blah, 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 you know? Yeah. So if I do this idea, then this brand will then come and work with me. And it's almost this idea of the brand, by working with the brand, it legitimizes your idea and endorses you. I think it's really important for people to remember, and this is the realization that I realized, you make the brand cool, they don't make you cool. They need you, you don't need them. And actually, when you get into bed with a brand, your wings are immediately clipped, because at the end of the day, you have to be ticking the boxes that the brand wants. And in my experience, having worked with a large amount of the biggest brands in the entertainment and sports industry in the world, it's about selling product. It's not about community. It's not about people. And so for someone like myself, I got to the point where I was having to make decisions that were being forced on me by the brand that were actually detrimental to the community. And I had to make a choice. do I continue working with the brand, or do I look out for my community? And because my community had trusted me in my journey, I chose the community. And so that meant my relationship with that particular brand had to end. But what you often realize when you go through the divorce period with one brand, you suddenly start realizing the value of what you have, and also the greater potential of what you have, because you then start being allowed to have conversations with different people who, a really big part for me was having a conversation with a group, and they were like, you're a community builder. You grow communities, you nurture them, and then you use them as a catalyst for change. No one in my Nike conversation had ever said that to me. All I ever got was, it's a really cool running club. Let's keep it at that, you know? And so I think people have to understand that when you get into bed with a brand, you're not in relationship with a brand. You're in relationship with the person who works for that brand. So you want to make sure that you're making really good and solid relationships with people really high up the food chain who sign the checks and make the decisions. Because otherwise you end up having, you know, you end up going through periods where you feel the brand has your back and then they don't. And this current climate that we're in now, if you think about, you know, Black Lives Matter movement and the general injustices that are going on in the world, there are a lot of ambassadors I know who work for brands who actually are now realizing the brand doesn't have my back. The brand doesn't want me to protest. The brand doesn't want me to shake the tree. The brand just wants me to help them sell more products. And I think it's really important that when you start your idea and you're thinking about going to work with a brand, that you yourself write down what your own brand values are, i.e., what do you as an individual actually stand for? Because that means you don't start relationships with people who ultimately are going to hurt you in the long run.
Ian, can I make a point here about what Charlie said? I agree, and there is one thing for me that I understood along the way, that was your values start to becoming different than the movement values. So one thing is you as an entrepreneur, and another thing is what the movement became after growing. So this start to make a point. It's important to make a point here. And the other thing about the checks, for me, it was this whole capitalist system that is now sick and don't works. You need to understand how they play the game, because it is a game. And if you don't understand how they play the game, it's not that you need to play the game as the big brands or big corporations, not this. But if you don't understand, you can't reverse and use for your good. I think what Charlie said for me, it's about this. So you need to understand and use the system against the system. And for me, it's about that.
It's really important that you learn to speak the language of the organization that you're going to try and partner with, you know. And so I always say to people is kind of, you have to be reading the books that they're reading, watching the films that they're watching, trying to have the experiences that they're having, because it will help you in the long run. You've got to do your homework. If you don't do your homework, you will get crushed, because you're dealing with very big organizations with large sums of money and huge resources. And it is a David versus Goliath battle that eventually you end up in, you know. And, you know, as I say to people, you know, I'll say this one thing. A lot of times, the reason why we work with brands is because we've actually been conditioned to work with them from the moment that we're kids. So someone like myself, who grew up in South London, not, you know, wasn't an affluent area, having a pair of Nike shoes was like being a millionaire when I was like 12 years old. So from that early age, it was in my head that, you know, working with a big sports brand is really good. It gives you kudos. Actually, what I realized is there are 57 sports brands that make footwear. You don't always have to have the conversation with the top three. Sometimes having it with the underdog is actually a lot more of a fruitful partnership, because it's a partnership that we're trying to get, a long-term partnership that grows as you grow, not an activation. Activations are detrimental to community. I don't want you to paint the basketball court if you're not going to give me a coach for 2 years. I'll stop there, Ian, because you know I like to talk a lot, so I'm going to stop.
You and I have had this conversation a lot. There's lots of ironies in sub-layers of what we're doing here. But Charlie, with that, I mean, obviously you talk about values, and always been a great believer, you have principles, and a principle isn't a principle unless it hurts you every now and again. Yeah, and then you have to, you've got to be able, because if you don't, it's the old thing, if you don't stand for something, you fall for anything. But Tomás, he made an interesting point, and Amy, I'm going to come back to you just now, but you as
Amy, join with me. Let's talk together.
Okay, yeah. Exactly. So feel free to jump in. But I just wanted to ask, because Charlie, you say you're a Renaissance man, and you've got, you have your own set of values. And have you seen, as Dem Crew's grown? And I know it's not the kind of movement where you sit in strategy sessions and write down the brand values of Dem Crew, but have you seen it evolve away from, as you said, it wasn't designed around you, you were the catalyst for it. But how would you describe it now as a movement? What is it? What does Dem Crew stand for now as a set of values?
I would say that, what's been really interesting about COVID is it's caught a lot of the running crew movement by surprise. We never ever thought there'd be a time when we couldn't come together and gather. So now we're in this situation where we physically cannot go and run together, because no one wants 150 people running down Oxford Street in London anytime soon. It's starting to make me realise how much social good and social impact has become our new cause. As I always say to people, I always used to say, running is the least important part of what we do. But now I really, really believe it. It's got nothing to do with running, because we've taken the running out completely now, but we're still together and we're still functioning. What we're realizing is, as a family of people, because we are so big and we have so many people within the organization who are so connected, that actually, if we support a cause, we can bring real change. We can bring real impact. And that's what we're about. Because ultimately, what we've tried to do is reverse engineer what big brands do to us, which is, if we get them all in the same t-shirt and put them outside the store, then that makes, that creates some good kind of media for them. So one of the things that we've done, for example, is we've partnered with a community gym that we know is really struggling, but we know we have members who, it's £15 a month to be a member of this gym. So so we're saying to our members, you join the gym and you pay £30 because you can afford to pay that £30. And that means someone from the community can also come and, and train in the gym for free. So what I'm realizing is, it's about really realizing and facing up to your potential and your position in society. That took me a really long time. About 6 months ago, I was in my area. I go to the corner shop. There's loads of kids, the kind of ruffian kids who kind of hang out in the neighborhood. And as I walk up to them, I'm thinking, we're either going to have a confrontation or we're going to have words. And actually, the group steps aside and one of them opens up the door. And he's like, yo, boss man, come through. And I actually stopped and I looked around and I was like, is he talking to me? And he was like, yeah. You're the boss man. We see you, man. You're always traveling. You always we see what you do. So yeah, we're opening up the door for you. We're showing you that respect. And I actually had to realize that as a leader of organization, I have to step into my light. And that's what I say to everyone who run them. We have to realize that we have a greater cause than just running. If we don't step into that and accept that responsibility, we're doing the community a disservice. And that's been a really important thing for me to accept, is this position of you create the movement that then has a reaction, and you have to be prepared for the reaction and you changing as yourself, you know what I mean? And how that changes you as a person. So this idea of being able to command space as a leader is really, really important. I kind of answered it in a weird kind of way.
No, you didn't. Absolutely, you didn't.
Hopefully,
no, Amy, for you, I mean, Charlie makes a point. You know, in COVID, where now running isn't possible, I guess in most cities, having soup gatherings is not possible. Have you seen the community step up in different ways now? Because most of the people running soup are already engaged. They're all community organizers anyway. How have you seen that change over the last few months?
Yeah, I've observed that, you know, people, I mean, I think that most people are nimble, they're small, they've already done a number of dinners, so they've collected email addresses so they can start a Zoom conversation where you donate through an online platform. The money gets transferred in a different way rather than physically in person. But people are still gathering. They're still meeting. They still need each other. You can still raise money in a way, because we're not meeting in person. You can open the donation in a different way, where people can donate larger amounts of money that way. I think it gets a little wonky, you know, it's not easy. It doesn't feel the same. There isn't that side chatter. There isn't those natural occurrences and bumping into, and those, you know, those moments of deep conversation, but I think it still happens. And I think it depends on who you are as a person. Are you one to be a viewer, or are you one to be a participant? And I think you can be both of those things at soup. And I think sometimes soup can be the most boring place on the planet, and then the next month it could be all of the thing that you're passionate about. It's, you know, kismet, and there's a moment of connection. So I think change is really boring because it takes a lot of time. It's uncomfortable. It's not flashy. It's those small things and those small moments. So I think if people still use the soup model during COVID, it is around like that moment of exchange. In Detroit, I watched a lot of soup recipes were exchanged ahead of time. So you would make your soup at home and eat it and watch at the same time. So I think there are those things that make that human experience feel less isolated, alone, even if we're doing it on screen. I mean, even just today, just being around this conversation just sparks things in different ways, and things that you can be building for when we can gather more together. I think we only limit ourselves because we think somebody else might not like it. It's just that we put it out there for those who want to participate. You know, kind of going back into time, soup in the winter is the most, we stopped doing it in the summer. Who wants to be indoors when it's so beautiful? And the older generation will be like, oh, don't do a dinner in winter. No one will want to drive when there's snow, or travel when there's snow. No, that's when people get in their car. That's when people want to be around each other. And I'm excited for when we figure out a post-COVID world. I think soup's going to blow up even more because we now recognize and realize how deeply we need each other in the place that we live. That's it. You know, where we live is it. We can travel, but right now I can't, you know, like I'm not really going anywhere. And so all I have is who's around me. And the deeper the roots are, the less shaken I feel by the pandemic. And I think that's the whole point of all of this. That's what Thomas and Charlie are both saying. Like, it's not about me per se. I just want to be the instigator of gathering. I want to be the instigator of deeper connection. I want things like our differences to feel not as important as the things that like are the things that matter, which is I live here, you're important. An idea is just an idea. It's about the energy and excitement and love and nurturing and kindness that you massage into making that dream come alive.
just one, and I'll throw this out to all three of you, because both you and Charlie are touching on an important point there, that it is, I think what this COVID thing has done is, for the good brands and for the good companies, and particularly local businesses, it's reconnected them with their community, and it's really exposed some of the bigger brands, like an Amazon, for example, that doesn't belong anywhere anymore. You know, it chooses its sort of tax residency wherever it can pay least tax. It puts its operations where it can get away with, and it isn't rooted in any city or community anymore. And do you think, and Thomas, I mean, obviously your business is all around small scale farmers in local communities and trying to create that connection with the people who buy their organic vegetables. I mean, who do you think, which of the, you know, who's going to win coming out of this in terms of businesses and brands? You know, the local ones or the big ones, the big global ones?
I think the ones that really have truth inside. I think that about business, some barriers and some masks are starting to like go down, and for us in kind of farmers, it's a funny story, because when trying to connect with farmers, we have across Latin America now 800 farmers. So we start to sending letters between consumers and farmers, because farmers, some of them, they don't have internet, they don't have 3G, 4G, 5G. So what's starting to become, it's like we have now 35,000 consumers. So last month, I looked at the financial organ, and we said, okay, we sent 120,000 letters, and I said, holy shit, what I'm going to do with this? Because it's a lot of letters, a lot of money, but it's what we are here for. So it's about connecting the farmers with the city. And for me, it's about more local than global. I think we are going to a moment now about COVID of changing our consciousness and habits. And we are starting to look more to other persons and who is around. And you can't really look at it with someone that is in South Africa right now. So I think it's going to grow more business like locally, peer-to-peer, than global business, because it's more about valorizing and exchanging with who is like around you, like Soup do, like Charlie do, like Amy and Soup, I said the movement. And for me, farmers is the same. It's about knowing who grow your food. Brazil, it's a huge country, so it's like, it's not next door. So for me, it's about the economy. It's going in a way that is not more global, it's more local. It's about looking aside to the other person who is around you. And this is going to grow a lot of movements peer-to-peer around the cities for me.
I heard something the other day that like kind of put some things into perspective for me. It's like, are you waiting around for things to go back to normal? So you're just like hesitating, or are you adapting and changing? Because if you're waiting for it to go back to normal, it's already, it's gone. That day.
It's not going to. There is no.
Yeah, that day has passed. So are you adapting? Are you being flexible? Are you just changing? Are you allowing just time just to be time? And are you allowing, yourself to make mistakes and fail? Like, what beautiful experiences is failure, like, man, I've learned a lot by screwing up. What a joy, what a privilege.
Normally when you screw up, at the time you don't say this, but after 3-6 months you do. I still don't have the consciousness to like, okay, it's really nice to screw up right now. It's about sometimes I still don't have this consciousness, but like in 1 month, 2 months, I said, okay, I learned a lot about it. I agree with you.
I just watched a documentary about Miles Davis, and he didn't play his horn for 7 years. Like, 1, I didn't know that. 2, I didn't, they just moved on from it. And it was the most like aha moment for me of like, oh, okay, I just took a big time out because I needed it for my own emotional well-being. I couldn't be as creative as I used to be. How other people were, more than I even like consciously understood of what pressure I had put on myself, but what I thought this thing needed. I was like, you just need a nap. And my nap was a couple of years, you know? And the thing is no one knows. No one's going to ask because no one looks at my resume. Like, I know, but the movement will be better if I'm healthy, if I wake up passionate, if I'm waking up or not, like if I'm sleeping for 13 hours, like there's something about that, like giving myself so deeply to the community. You rarely get that kind of return on your investment emotionally. So I had to take my own return back, and my own return was a really long nap, and I'm ready to go again, and in an exciting way where it's you're not angry. You can adapt in different ways. It's not about you. By walking away, you leave that space for other people to rise up.
Yeah. I mean, Ian, just in reference to your point on who's going to thrive, I think it's the brands and people who actually have something that actually stands for something and, you know, admit to what their organization is really about, they will thrive. People who are creating projects for the world that we're living in now, this COVID situation, the post-COVID world, those people who are future thinking, you know, who are understanding the impact of what this period of time we're going through on now and how that's going to change and shape people's behavior, their needs, their wants, and so on and so forth, those people will thrive. Organizations that are just waiting around for things to return back to normal, they're probably not going to be around. And you're seeing that with a lot of, you know, if you look at the arts organizations and theatres and so on and so forth, there's a lot of theatres where like, I'm just waiting for things to go back to normal so that I can reopen my theatre. When actually, if you think about it, drama and theatre and entertainment was something that came for the people. So maybe what you might want to do is think, actually, I don't need a physical space. Let me take this thing that I do to the people, you know? So that's, you know, kind of one of the things. And I think organizations who are saying, oh, I really want to do work in the community, but I really need to make money and please my investors. They need to make a decision to decide, is it a community or is it investors? Or are you actually trying to create a movement? Because a movement is very different from a community. Community needs a leader. Movement just needs individuals.
Yeah, but there is, for me, Charlie, in this position of really which organization are not trying to please their investors, I really feel that don't actually. And we need to be careful, I think, because we are in a path right now that a lot of people are using COVID or these new times as marketing. So which one has the truth? Because as we saying as social or entrepreneurs or anything like that, what is the word they are trying to use now? Because like sustainability, like 10 years ago, you know, is just coming right now, ESG and stuff like this, but everything is like getting social. So we get a call from Monsanto like last week, and it said, dude, I don't deal with Monsanto. Simple as that, because I don't believe in the brand. I don't believe in the company. So it's kind of our job to not about the size of companies or stuff like this, but to say, no, you won't have these cute marketing brand with me or with these kind of people because you're trying to do marketing and sales just this, you know. So I think there is really few organizations that are not trying to please the investor, and the ones that are going to keep going and to be healthier are the ones that have actually truth. And there's a little few that do that.
Exactly. There was a headline in a Harvard Business Review article a couple of months ago when this all started. And it said, "A time to lead with humanity and purpose." And my thought was, well, that sounds right, but why wouldn't you do that anyway? And it's like, so now is the time to lead with humanity and purpose. 2 months ago, it wasn't really, but now it is. And probably when things settle down, we can go back and do away with the humanity and purpose. And I think hopefully what this situation has done is just that that's the only way to lead. People, as you said, Charlie, people talk a lot about pivoting, and like pivoting in sport, when you pivot on a basketball court or whatever, you've got to have one foot locked solid on the ground and the other foot moves. So and the foot that stays fixed is what you stand for. It's your why. The what you do and how you do it might change. You can pivot how you work and what you produce, but why you do it shouldn't change. Yeah.
There are many people who start initiatives and ideas and they actually don't have a why.
Yeah.
And so you just, and it's really interesting because a lot of people, I work as a brand consultant, so I advise a lot of people. I'm always asking, what is your why? Because the thing I've realized as a runner, for example, regardless of how much I train for a marathon, at some point it's going to start to hurt. And then I'm going to start to have to ask my questions of like, why am I actually doing it? The time that I'm running becomes irrelevant. The medal becomes irrelevant. There's always a deeper why. And the thing I always say to people is, when you're starting a business or running a business, always keep checking in about what your why actually is.
Yeah, but when you say about golden circle and the why thing, Charlie, one thing that is like, for me was like this, like you think you have a why sometimes when you start, and then you realize then that's not your why. That's not why you realize. So you said, what the fuck, what I'm doing? Because I believe in something that actually it's not me, it's not the company. So normally when you start, you think you're doing for some rational reason, but the why is almost always emotional. Almost, for me, it was about exchanging and feeling in the group and as a community, and how do you change the system, the food system. But I only realized that this like 2 years after I was MVP and prototyping and stuff like this.
Yeah. And so I think it's okay to admit to yourself at times that you don't know what you're doing. That's quite empowering to actually say, I don't know what I'm doing. And I often find myself sitting in meetings where everyone thinks I know what I'm doing, and I'm just as clueless as everyone else, and we're working out along. Admitting your vulnerability and facing up to your vulnerability is really, really important. And that's one of the biggest things that I learned is when you can allow yourself to be vulnerable and allow yourself to confront your weaknesses, that's when the growth happens.
Yeah.
Just to pull that back to the topic that we were on, because where that shows up in the hardest part is when you've got to start employing people who are much better than you are. Yeah, and that requires a sense of vulnerability, self-awareness that actually I suck at this, and I need to find somebody much better than me to do that. And yes, you need the resources to bring those people in, but it's at that point where you've got to be prepared that you, and I think one of you say make yourself redundant in a way. It's like, and then you can work on the business, not necessarily in the business. Yeah, and build that team of people. But I think at this point, we've been going for about an hour. I'd like to throw it out to the guys. Sorry, I was very rude. I didn't sort of introduce our team here. We've got about 15 or 16 guys in a room in Joburg, appropriately socially distanced. We've got people wearing masks here in Cape Town. And then we've got about 18 or 19 of our guys on Zoom from different parts of the country. So I'd like to throw it open to you guys and to put a question to our panel here. Anybody like to ask them a question? Ian? Yeah, one, Linz. Yeah, one from the floor. Linz, can you? Yeah, you unmuted.
Yeah, it's Simpura or Trigger, as I'm known. Yeah.
Hey,
How are you, man? Man like Charlie, how are you?
I'm very good, my friend. Very good indeed.
Yeah, man. First of all, great work with what you're doing. One thing I just want to know from you is, in terms of working in the inner city, you know, it has its challenges and whatnot. Working with youth that don't have, as you said, you gave them 30 pairs and then they ran away. You know. How do you keep them inspired? How do you keep them aspiring for greater things? And how do you, because you deal with different personalities and different backgrounds, how do you align the goal of the movement to sort of be in tune with, to push everybody who's involved in the movement to give their all towards the movement? So how do you make it relevant to them? What are some of the things you do? It could be little tricks, little phrases you have, little mantras.
Well, really great questions, actually. One of the first, as I say to people, is I work with people who are difficult to reach.
Yeah.
And so when you're working in the inner city, you know, there's a lot of issues that come with working with people who are growing up in that environment, and there has to be an understanding of that. One of the first things that I always do is I lead by example. I never ask a young person to do something that I wouldn't do myself. Never. You know, a lot of times when people work with people, they are asking them to do things that they actually wouldn't do themselves. So I make it clear I'm not your parent, you know, but I am here if you need me. That's one thing as well. Secondly, having a manifesto that everyone has to sign up to when they join the organization. So that as soon as you are part of Dem Crew, you understand the values of what Dem Crew stands for, what we will accept and what we won't accept. And there are no exceptions. I don't treat the millionaires in my crew any differently than I treat the drug dealers in my crew. Everyone is treated absolutely equally. And, you know, there has to be this understanding that there is a bigger picture at stake. And the work that we are doing together will impact you as an individual, your family as a result, the immediate community around them, and so on, and then onto the world. I always make it seem this is bigger than Dem. It's bigger than me. It's bigger than you. We're trying to create a situation that benefits the people who are coming after us. If you're anyone who's ever been involved in any musical movement, you know, where you've seen it blow up, there's always people in the first phase who think that they have reached the pinnacle of how high they can go. And then the second phase comes, and then the ceiling gets pushed up higher. And my thing is always always aspire to keep pushing higher and higher and higher. And the most important thing I do is I teach people about the system. So when we had the situation where the kids came down and they came and ran once and then disappeared with the trainers, one of the first things that I did for any of the kids that we managed to kind of get them to come back was like, you do realize that this shoe that you are so excited about only cost £15 to make. So we did a whole session where we actually taught them the process of how a shoe goes from design to manufacture. So they suddenly understood the value of this thing that they were valuing so much actually was a very, very small thing to make. Yeah. So when a company comes down and gives away products, because every company likes to give away products, and if you've never had a company send you a package, you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I got something for free. This is amazing. That's the least that they can do. You know, it's like if you're a musician and your manager comes to you and says, you know, I got you some press in the music magazine, and they want you to be excited. Well, the music magazine is there to cover people who are hot and new and fresh and exciting. That's how they stay relevant. Your manager's job is to get you into those publications. So they're not doing anything for you that's out of the ordinary. Yeah. So when I work with young people, or anyone I work with, I try and do things for them that are out of the ordinary. You know? So that they actually have that epiphany moment where they're like, yo. And then I think it's always really important to have your quotable things that you can say to someone that impact them. Things that stick in their mind that, you know, make them go away and really think about what you said. And also, having rituals are really important. That's the reason why I love South Africa. When I go and run in South Africa, I'm like, this place is amazing because there are so many rituals and things that people do that only happen here. And that's what makes it special. You know, it's like, you know, and so with Dem Crew, it's like one of the first things I did when we got all the kids together, everyone was like, let's go run, let's go run. And I was like, no, before we run, we're going to chat. We're going to have a conversation for 20 minutes. We're going to catch up about what happened in the week, what's going on with your family, what's going on in school. They're like, yeah, but we're here to run. I'm like, yeah, anyone can run. But we run as a family. We don't run as strangers. So what happened in your week is really important to me because I know that the lessons you learn on this run are going to influence what happens in the week, in the things that happen afterwards. Yeah. You know, if I go to a soup, you know, thing in Detroit, I know that the conversation I have there and the lessons I learn, they're going to impact me and impact the people around me, you know, and there are not very many spaces in the world where you can have that. So treasure the time that we have together because tomorrow is not guaranteed.
Yep. Thank you, John.
You're welcome, my brother. Thank you.
We've got Jadone put his hand up in the chat. Jadone, do you want to ask your question?
Yeah, thank you, guys. This is very informational. I have two questions, actually. The first one, what happens when your organization evolves to the extent that the values of that organization becomes different from your personal values? For example, say the organization grows and the board decides to go in a certain direction which is not in line with your values or what you thought your why was from the start. And the second thing, I like that Charlie mentioned about the ego. So I started my project because of my own personal experience, which made me feel a certain way, which I didn't want others to feel that way. So there was a sort of, I felt at one point, there was a sort of ego, a victim ego involved. And when I had this self-inquiry at the beginning of this year, I decided to change sort of my mantra to I am doing this to save the world, from I am doing this to save the world, to I am doing this because I love it and I feel like it's part of my purpose. So how do you know that you are always living or you're doing something not out of the ego? Because as social entrepreneurs, most often we always want to tell our stories to entice people by showing this victimhood. This is where we were, which is always true. But sometimes it comes across, or behind that there is a certain victim ego. So how do you balance that with really feeling that calling, that purpose? Thank you.
The ego one, for me, doing what you are already doing, it's being aware of your ego, it's how you do it for me. Because when you know what you know, as you said, about why you're doing and being aware of your ego, you start controlling it. But you never going to be in full control of your ego, and you're never going to kill the ego. So it's always going to be there. You just need to know, to be aware of what you're doing. But about the organization things, what I said about the why and boards and stuff like this, I think there's two things for me here. One thing is that your why, it's going to be why you created the organization, and it's going to be the first organization or movement why. But then when you get more people, more team, and insider movement or organization, this why starts to make little changes in what, in how, not the why, the solid why, but it's not because you work there for your why that other people are going to have the same why. You understand what I'm saying? It's like it's different. It's always going to be different for each one that goes into the organization. But to not lose the track that why you started it, I think it's really important to you to know why you started for you and what the organization became. And how to do that, it's kind of a little bit hard, because when you say about board, it's what I said, or Charlie and Amy said about system, because you need to understand what are you doing. So how much share the board has, or the legislation, talk to lawyers and stuff like this. Because if you don't, you have the risk of losing it's not about control, it's about the why, it's about your purpose, what you're doing. So it's knowing the system and know what you're getting to. So how much share your board has, how much share your partners has, so what are your contracts. So it's kind of hard, but never go away from your why. For me is this, but you have to differentiate your why than the organization, and why the people are going to work there is different than why you started it, and you need to realize that as soon as possible.
I had this thought that you are totally 1,000,000% correct on everything you said, but as you were talking, it just made me realize, like, when you build the thing, your story fuels the beginning, but it won't, like, that's it, that, like, it only fuels the beginning. If you're doing the work well, of course you're bringing other people's narratives and journeys and experiences that only flesh out the beauty of the project, of what you're doing. Your story becomes just part of the larger narrative. It should always be the anchor of the why of what you're doing. But what compels me to keep doing Soup 10 years later is not my experience. It's hearing that the experience has been mimicked all over the world blows my mind. Like, it reminds me of our human connection. It reminds me that if I want to change the world, the only thing I get to do is change myself. And that change, I get to partner alongside these beautiful humans who, if they're having the same experience, that only just adds to the reason why the change is necessary, or to the simplifying what it is. And when you talk about your board, are they changing it just so they can make money, or are you doing it so you can change the system? Those always has to be the questions that are being asked. I think having how many shares, you're the founder, but like, that doesn't mean that you have all the answers. If you think that they're changing it in a way where it completely diverts from the mission, maybe get a new board. If it's changing it so that it enhances the mission, that it's cultivating and growing us, not me or just the few of them, those are the things that I think about around change.
Yeah, one thing that you said, Amy, for me, that I just realized is, like, for me, you can't set the path, all the path. You set some direction, your why is the direction, and the path start to changing as other people came in, and it's natural to change. For me, what you need to do is, like, who is going into your board? Don't put people in your board and you don't agree with them. You can disagree in some subjects, you will probably, but then how much power decision they have in your board at this point, you need to be careful, because when you're starting, okay, I'm saying about social enterprise, so I'm sorry, Charlie and Amy, because I will say about investors, but it's my experience. So When you have angels, okay, these angels can't have more than 10% of your company. Why? Because 3 rounds away from now, you won't be able to make these direction decisions. And these direction decisions is like the one that I told you. I don't deal with Monsanto, or I don't hire people and make they work like for 12, 16 hours a day. These are direction decisions, and you have to be empowered as you grow to make these decisions. But you don't have full control, and you won't have it. That's the truth.
I think it's really important to realize many of us want to be leaders, but we don't have leadership qualities, and we're not prepared to do the work that we need to do to be order to become great leaders. And so one of my big lessons is kind of really being very honest with myself about, you know, if I do have a board, why I brought them in and what I'm hoping that board will achieve. And also realizing that the very simple fact that I have now brought in these other people means that this is a problem I'm going to encounter at some point unless I choose the right people, you know. And so this is what I say to people is you have to do your research in the very beginning, and that research doesn't stop at what they are telling you in the meeting. I will be on someone's Instagram, in their Facebook, in their LinkedIn, looking about why they left the company they were with previously. I'm doing a whole backstory investigation into that person because I want to know what their real values are, you know, not what they're telling me. I want to know what they're showing the rest of the world when they're not with me. And there's many organizations I know who have been derailed because they simply got the wrong board members and they're not brave enough to bring new ones in.
Yeah, this is some organizations like just, or some movements just go down because a wrong board. This is we see this every day. So you will disagree with your board. You can do the research, you can do whatever you want, but you will disagree sometime with your board. The important thing is that your board can't pass away from the why of the organization. Okay, so for us, I put in the social contract of the company institutionally that Raízs can't pay less than half for the farmers than what we sell. So if we sell for 100, we can't pay less than 50 for the farmers. There is no board that can take this away from Raízs. When you enter, you have, so these structures, you need to be careful because you will disagree, people change, relationships change. So it's kind of, you need to take care of the movement of the company. And the best way to do this is understanding the really risky points, I think.
Let's go to Nkaniso, and then Neo, I think, has got a question as well.
Yeah, thank you guys. You guys are incredible leaders. My question is specifically for Amy, but it's open to the rest of you guys. Amy, particularly as a young woman, I think when I did a bit of research, I found out that there was, I think at the time there was about 22% unemployment in Detroit. You talk about the mindset of, you know, being an employee and not necessarily entrepreneurship. I would like to know, particularly with my case here in Durban, where we have now, I think it's about 26% unemployment. A large number of people are homeless. There's crime rate is so high. When you are thinking about forming your organization and faced with so many challenges that are almost insurmountable for a young person, and I'd like to know what motivated you to basically fight against this sort of mountain that you had in front of you and to persevere? What kept you going? What is the thing that kept you going through, I'm sure, through the challenges that you might have gone through to be able to deliver your vision?
Yeah, great question. And I recognize, man, Detroit's in a tough spot. And I think for me, especially as a white woman in a primarily Black community, I wasn't there to save it. I was there just to be there. Like, if I believe deeply in justice, and I believe that like there's so much potential and possibilities, and we needed to create opportunities. We needed to create a gathering where people felt less alone and felt less isolated. We did a lot of things wrong to start, but that didn't stop us. I didn't think that things that I didn't think I would do. I didn't think I would change unemployment. I didn't think I would change the levels of homelessness or the levels of poverty. But what I did know that I could change was a perspective shift. And I, especially when the dinner started to be 80% Black, which took 3 years to happen. I mean, we were white kids starting it in a Hispanic neighborhood. We knew that we needed to be consistent. We needed to show up. We needed to be there. I had seen so many fly-in groups. You come in, I think Charlie said the right word, activations. You come in, you activate, you leave all this knowledge, but without any roots. So it would rain and it'd all go away. So for me, I deeply believed that it was always Detroit first. If other cities wanted to start it, I'd give my time and my energy, but my energy was always to Detroit first. And then we were building, and then through time. That's all I can say was time, showing up, being there, partnering with organizations that would match at the door, getting smart to say match at the door and match soup, give money to our organization. That was the way that we would be making money. And knowing that like we just had to be present, and the more we were present, the more I was building up leaders in the community. So we started with a citywide dinner, and then because the city's so big, we started building the neighborhood dinners. And it was in the neighborhood dinners that we were understanding that the citywide dinner became a platform for neighborhood voices. And so we were building not a hierarchy, but like a better system where we could build better equity, if that makes sense. So it was about and listening. It was so much about soup is just about listening, and it was about shifting how change actually happens. These are what people are capable of doing. Yes, we have climate change. Yes, we have poverty. Yes, we have all this stuff, and it's so big, but here's what the neighbors are capable of doing. And if they are starting to feel safe in their neighborhoods, the other stuff starts to shift too. It's that ecosystem of change.
I would say, because the crime thing is really interesting. When you're dealing with people who are difficult to reach, it's not going in there with judgment. So one of my things, after week 1, when the 30 pairs of trainers disappeared, I wasn't like, oh my God. I was just like, cool, I understand why that happened, because someone's just giving you something and there are really no stakes. So yeah, take them. It's cool, because I understand it only cost the company £15 anyway, and it's coming out in the marketing budget. So that's okay. I am there for the communities I work with through the good times and the bad. I will go and get you out of the police station. I will pay your bail money. I will represent you if you need a character witness, because I understand that life is hard. And it's really easy when you're coming in as an outsider with good intentions to go and help in the community to be quite judgmental about the behavior that you find. But there has to be an understanding of why people are doing what they're doing. That's usually because they feel powerless. They don't have a voice. There's a lot of deeper things that go on. And that's the reason why, when I say to people ask me what I do, I say I'm a translator. I'm someone who can have a foot in both camps and translate so that both parties understand how they're going to get through this together. And as Amy said, time is a great healer. I've been doing Dem Crew for 13 years. So it's kind of, a lot of times people will look at our organizations and be, wow, it's really amazing. They're so successful. It's like, yeah, because we've been doing it a long time. And even when it was like horrible, we still showed up because we knew how important the impact of what we were trying to achieve would have on that neighborhood. you know. So I say to people, if you don't have the time, don't do it. Just don't do it. Go and do something else, you know, because it's kind of, we're in this kind of situation where people think that these ideas kind of become successful overnight, and they don't, you know, and there's a lot of bits and pieces that people don't see that are not that nice, you know, but they're the most important parts, you know.
Cool. And then Nail, I think up in Joburg, you've got a question.
Hi, everybody. Thank you very much. Thomas, I think my question is to you. So, I mean, maybe going back to the earlier points that you mentioned around things like being able to look at the number of letters that you guys are sending and still being able to make that decision that we want to continue with this. Or maybe versus the narrative around being able to be quite intentional about we're not going to work with one side. And as a result, we're going to try and play the bigger game. I guess my core question is, how do you still ensure that the organization can hold true to those ideas versus the founder needing to still set that tone? And how do you make sure that that level of thinking becomes institutionalized versus you always having to raise your voice and saying, hey, but everybody, our why is this? And I'm very much interested in like, how do you build that consciousness in that organization's ability to make the decisions with
sorry, to make the decisions what? The audio fails here.
Make decisions that are still in line with your core why.
So for me, this question is about culture. Culture it's kind of a tricky thing because it's not a block, you know, it's like a cloud. So culture for me, so it was just me. The first people that you go into the organization, the first 5-10 people, these people are like the most important people for me in the terms of culture, because they will build areas, they will share with you responsibility, they will make the company grow. So to make a culture for me, it's about daily decisions, not strategic ones that you said, okay, I will expand like 500K and send these letters or not. It's about every day people have rituals like playing music together inside the company, and everybody has a voice. So we have like more than 100 employees, and I still go and talk to everyone on Friday for 1 hour, and everybody has a voice, a share of the conversation. It's about little things. Culture is about little things. It's not about big ones. So this is important. At the time that you have your why and the company start to grow, you need to get people that are with you together in this purpose. They have different narratives from you, but they know the message. They know the dream. I think the dream is something important that you can never not attach. The dream is really important for me to have positivity and leadership for the people. So
dude, I'm a mess, you know. So sometimes I just get home and say, okay, I wanted this day to be over, but then I think about the dream. So thinking about the dream and sharing the dream, it's something really important for culture for me, and making these little points, these little daily points. Why I'm saying about culture? Because this is the only way when the organization grows, then you can still spread and still be comfortable with the decisions, because you don't make all the decisions anymore. You make some of them. So the other people who still make decisions, they they need to share the dream. They need to know the culture. They need to know what's the priority. So we always prioritize in our company people before profit. So we never prioritize profit. That's not why the company started. So I never took $1 away from Raízs, not salary. I'm saying about profits. So what prioritizing in your company? These decisions, these message, this share of view, it's only possible because of these little things that make your culture good or not. And the first 5 people that goes into your organization, these are like a block, dude. They will drive you for some time and they will spread your dream. I think Charlie and Amy said, one of them said about the first 15 people. I think these first guys or they are the solid block that will make your culture and your spread of decision much more easier after you grow.
I think company culture is one of the most important things that people when they're first starting their small organizations forget. And in my experience, I worked with Nike for 9 years, and I would see people would come over from Portland where their HQ is, and they'd all have Nike tattoos. And I didn't understand. I was just like, you love the company so much that you're getting the logo tattooed on your body. And then I went to HQ, and then it all makes sense. I felt like, oh, maybe I need to get the tattoo too, because, it seems like everyone here is drinking the Kool-Aid so much that basically, they love the company so much, they're all prepared to get speeding tickets on the way to work because they love it so much, and they are ride or die. So the company culture, the rituals that you put in place, the daily things that happen in the morning, in the night, really important. I'm working with a company at the moment, who are in the music industry, and they're very big players, and they don't have a company culture. So one of the things we've been doing is every session I do with them starts with a 5-minute meditation. Session 1, everyone's complaining. Why have we got to do this? I don't understand what's the purpose of it. 6 weeks later, now everyone's like, they're really looking forward to the meditation part. And the reason why I implicated that is you work in a high pressure industry and you're dealing with difficult individuals. So that ability to actually stop, breathe, take stock, think about what you're going to say before you react, actually in the long run, it's going to save you money, it's going to save you stress, it's going to bring the team together, and it's going to be beneficial for not only the company, but the individuals that work with it, but also the people that you have to go out and work with. So as I say again, what are the rituals that you yourself do? I wake up in the morning and the first thing I do is I play music. So that's part of the ritual of Dem Crew. When you come, there's going to be a DJ and he's going to be playing music and we're going to have a little dance before we go on our run. Some people love it, some people don't. But I've always said to everyone, when you come through the door, this is not my house, it's not your house, this is Dem Crew's house. And how Dem Crew starts its session is we play music and we have a little bit of a dance. So if you want to be part of this organization, you want to work for this company, this is what you have to do. Because in times of COVID, when we're not together, Zoom call still starts, we're playing music and having a little dance, because we've got these rituals that are so ingrained in the people who are part of it, that even if I'm not there or we are not together, it just happens automatically. It's really important. And I think there's this kind of theory that people think, oh, it's a bit American, it's a bit naff. No, actually, it's how you breed success. I'm not bringing people together just for the sake of bringing people together. I'm bringing people together so that we can all help each other to be the best versions of ourselves that we can possibly be, whatever it takes. And again, I lead by example. So I'm the first one up on the dance floor doing the crazy dance. And I became a DJ because I can't really dance. But I don't mind embarrassing myself in front of the people I work with because I know it's for the greater cause.
Anybody else got, before you see your back, did you want to ask something?
Oh, yes, thank you, to the speakers as well. I resonate so much with everyone in various aspects. But in the community that I'm in, I find myself where we have created the space where we wish that young people should be able to use it to either optimize themselves or to grow themselves in any form. But we kind of get caught in a situation that says that we have to drag the horse to the pond to drink. And I just wanted to find out perhaps from the speakers, how did they manage to actually get the movement, I mean, to be global and to be as successful as they are as they speak? Because I resonate with much of the beginnings of their processes, but here I find myself with having to drag donkeys now or horses and everybody to the space and say, use it for yourself, instead of just maybe nagging or saying that there's nothing that's happening. Because one of the principles that we try to share with our people is that, especially within the immediate communities, self-reliance and using the space to actually grow themselves. But now how do we bring them to actually buy into it instead of relying on who have started already the path? Thank you.
My experience was, it took a year, and there was a moment, and it was a moment I wasn't even at, which is the really, like, I love this part of it. We had an idea, and it was about a woman who makes coats that turn into sleeping bags, and they donate these coats to homeless people, but then they hire homeless people to make the coats. Well, once you have this story, it became our story collectively. We had this idea that, and you see people all the time with soup that are like hyper skeptical, like this can't work. Like, what's this $500 really going to do? Well, belief and empowerment is huge. And so once you had that one story that could pivot, you try everything. You just try everything. We just kept showing up. We kept having the dinner at the same time. We kept being there, and it took a long time. And then it was like year 3, there was another pivotal story that kind of like, people started to realize, oh, it's not really about the money. It's about the leveraging of the story. It was storytelling. It was always telling our story. And though I was the representative of soup, and this is who I am, and this is what I bring to the table, what would happen is that as I would speak, other people's stories kept coming to the forefront and started using it in a way where they felt like it was theirs. And the day that I knew that I was done with Detroit soup, because I've moved on to trying to build this global infrastructure, was I was at a community meeting and I started speaking, and within 30 seconds an older woman in the audience stood up, told her story at soup, told her experience, and I just shut up because it wasn't mine anymore. It was ours. And I think you just have to keep dragging the horses, keep drag until you think you shouldn't be dragging anymore, and there'll be that one day where something magical happens, and it's a lot of really boring work, and it's not fast, it's not immediate, but and you'll look back, and it could take 5 to 10 years before it actually happens. I know that sounds overwhelming, but that's it. It's showing up, it's being present, it's giving these kids these opportunities over and over and over again. And there'll maybe be a generation that goes by that like kind of uses it, and there'll be that one kid that fucks it up, and it will break it, and the whole dam will like open up.
I think one thing I've realized is in your lifetime, we've all had many teachers. We've encountered many teachers in our lives, but there's only a few who we've listened to and whose words have really resonated with us. So one thing I realized when I work with young people, I realize I am just one of many teachers that you are going to meet in your life. And I can't think that I am going to be the one that's going to turn your life around, or because I provided this opportunity that you're going to take it. You know, I'm not the Messiah. I'm just Charlie Dark. You know what I mean? So if I create the event and no one comes, that's okay, because I put my ego aside. So it's not about, it's great. And And what I also realized as well is sometimes what you have to think about is the dynamics of a group. Generally, when you're working with young people, there are some individuals amongst that community of young people who, if they say, yes, I'm going to do it, everyone else will follow. There's that. Also, there's the thing I learned as a DJ. When you make a record, you never give it to the number one DJ. You give it to DJ number 3 and number 4. That's how you get the attention of number 1 and number 2, because they just can't believe they've been left out. So sometimes what I do is I choose the kids who no one else is really giving time and attention to. And I've learned to storytell well. Storytelling is really important, particularly for young people. They want their voices to be amplified globally. So I always say to them, global, not local. I'm going to amplify your story on a global level. That's another one of the ways that you get people to come to the lake and drink the water, as opposed to just coming down and staring at it.
Yeah, but at storytelling, I think there is one thing that Amy said that for me it's crucial, because with Amapico, you kind of know how to tell your story, but now it's not more your story. This is essential, because when you, like there is different types of people. I don't have Instagram or Facebook or stuff like this because I don't want to, but there is some people that wants to make their stories like share. For me, there is much more power when you tell the other people's stories. So in my case was, let me tell the farmer's story. When I started to tell the farmer's story, what was going on, this became natural. This became a movement. People were trying to connect with it and makes much more bigger, because it was not me talking about my story. Oh, okay, I'm a teacher. Okay, I started Raízs and stuff like this, you know. It's not a LinkedIn and like about what do you do anymore. These don't have power. These have power in these discussions. Okay, we know in yourself, but when you make to the community and to the society, tell the story of the kids and the young men that you are dealing with. This is much more power, and to everyone, like the protagonist of these stories, the central line, the first character of this story are the people that you work for, not you. And this is much more powerful than your story, than my story, than everyone's story here. And when you start doing that and telling their story and spreading this, the movement becomes much bigger and much bigger than you or your story. Your story you will just tell in places like this where we can share, and that's okay, but it's not important. We are not important. The people that are important is the people that you work with, you know. This is what make the bigger movement for me.
Wow, I don't think we could finish on a better comment than that. Charlie, Tomás, Amy, a huge thank you for taking time on your Saturday to come and talk to us. Thank you.